Hello, I am Jake Collins, and this is Knightmare Series 8, Episode 7, which was first broadcast on the 21st of October, 1994. We're with Dungeoneer Michael and advisors Ben, and Hayden to start with in this episode. At least two members of that team, if not more, are incredibly annoying, but I don't want to focus too much on that. Let's come back to what I was saying about that misleading object clue that this team had in the level 2 clue room. Warning, dangerous to those who are not dim, the scroll says. Rather like Olgarth's clue of the fish is off today. This is encouraging you to take something, but it sounds very much like it's saying, don't take it. In this case, the brain pills. The scroll was saying the brain pills are dangerous to those who are not dim, so give them to someone who is dim, Sidrus. But equally, it sounds like the scroll could be saying the brain pills are dangerous to you, so leave them where they are. And that's why we had this set up at the end of the previous episode in the Sewers of Goth, with Mike having to intervene to save Sidrus from Snapperjack. Very reasonably giving this team a second chance to get the not spell from Sidrus, because, yeah, it was misleading, and I very much understand why they didn't take the brain pills, even though they were supposed to. But I quite like the setup with Snapperjack seen on screen questioning someone apart from a Dungeoneer. If he can prove Sidrus is a fool, not difficult, it's Megida's verdict. He can kidnap her. It's nice to see that Snapperjack's role as Fool Taker does extend beyond Dungeoneers, like it's supposed to. So, on the whole, that was quite a clever way to get things back on track for the team when they didn't take the brain pills. Show us Snapperjack doing his work, and have Mike intervene to save Sidrus. So, that situation I'm okay with. It was a misleading clue and a nice situational save. And you can tell that they were supposed to have taken and used, given away the brain pills by now, because here are the plane breeze, which they also need in this sliding floor chamber. Obviously they'd have then picked these up to go with the plastic bat to make the fillet spell in place of the brain pills, rather than having taken the stinkwarts and never used it or mentioned it again. That's not the only messy thing about Mike's quest, that very misleading object clue. Way back in level 1 we had a spyglass sequence about Lissard changing the code on the rune lock. Surely there was supposed to be a rune lock on level 1 for Mike to unlock after that, but no, they forgot to put one in. So we're going to see it way later in the quest, here in level 2, in the very near future. But Mike's level 1 was a complete mess. Keep your eye on the clock. They took the sand timer. There was nothing to turn it over and slow down. Undoubtedly the fireballs in Fireball Alley were supposed to have been slowed down. Production team forgot to do it. Again, they'll kind of make up for that by doing it with Rebecca later in this episode. There's something very off about the effort that's being put into bringing Mike's quest to life, and it does make for a very strange viewing experience. Trying to add some tension by getting Snapperjack to chase them across the moving blocks there doesn't make a great deal of sense, because he's only harmful to you, he can only do anything to you once he's asked you his questions and you haven't got 2 out of 3 correct. So as a chasing hazard, I don't really buy him. But I do like Snapperjack as a part of the quest, bringing questions back into Knightmare. And unlike Brolican, Snapperjack's questions are a good, genuine challenge. Brolican doesn't know the answers. It's a complete waste of time answering his questions. Usually twice in the quest. Whereas with Snapperjack, he knows the answers because he wrote the question, and he is a genuine threat. If you don't get 2 out of 3 correct, he naps you, and he's got the big butterfly net to do it with. There's been some hate around in the past for Snapperjack. He's ridiculous, he's got a silly voice, and he's got a silly sock puppet as a snapdragon hand, and that's all perfectly true. But I do like Bill Cashmore's performance as Snapperjack, and I like what he adds to the quest, the way he brings riddles back in as a genuine challenge. So on the whole, Snapperjack gets a thumbs up from me. The question they don't get here, the god down there, beginning with P. I didn't blame them for not having any idea. P? I don't know any names for God down there beginning with P. No names for the devil begin with P that I know. It's not Hades, that begins with H. I was similarly stumped at the time when I was 11. But then some years later, when I was doing A-level English, and I was studying Geoffrey Chaucer's The Merchant's Tale, which is quite a chore to study Chaucer, there was a particular note of interest to me in that 2 of the characters in that story are Pluto and Persephone, which is quite an interesting story about Persephone spending half the year in the underworld and half the year on Earth and bringing spring up with her. But of course, it revealed to me the god down there, beginning with P, is Pluto. He's the god of the underworld. Now, at this stage, in 1994, I knew Pluto as a Disney cartoon dog, also as a planet, and yes, in those days, nobody had been mean enough to decide it wasn't a real planet, but it definitely was a planet. I suppose I must have known that Pluto, as there was a planet named after him, was a god of some sort, but I had no idea that he was the god of the underworld. So when I learned this in A-level English, I thought, aha, that's what Snapperjack was talking about. And that really does go to show how, whatever I'm doing in my life, at whatever stage, Knightmare is always on my mind. And here we are with the rune lock, as I promised. Now, I rather like this scene. This is the best staging of the rune lock you will ever see. Because of the angle this goth room is shot from, we can see Mike standing there. We can see the whole rune lock. Mike's not going to get in the way of the bricks at all. That's a big problem we sometimes experience with Dungeoneers standing in front of rune locks. I think it's easier for the guy with the mouse as well to see what Mike is doing with the wand and direct the cursor appropriately. It's a very smooth, very satisfying rune lock scene there. So perhaps, in many ways, it's better that it is here in level 2, in Goth, rather than in level 1 where it was originally supposed to be. And Mike is chased out by a troll. And I was really pleased to see that when this episode was on. I've been hoping to see a troll in person in Series 8. We had troll steps before, as a chase you out of the room sort of thing. But that is the first time a troll appears on screen in Series 8, and as it turns out, it's the only time a troll appears on screen in Series 8 because they get bogged down with Maya trogs instead. So on the whole, that rune lock scene there is one of my favourite scenes of Series 8, really. It's well staged because of the angle. It's the smoothest you'll ever see the reach wand being used with the mouse pointer guy, and it has the one appearance of the troll in Series 8. I hate that trapdoor room where Mike is just being fried by a fireball. It doesn't fit with the rest of Goth. It's in the style of level 1 rooms, really. The colours are funny. It's just very aesthetically unappealing to me. And they already had the right answer to how to get from level 2 to level 3 from Goth to the Maya world earlier in the series with Daniel. Nice, big, green, significant feeling staircase to descend down into Linghorn. I really like that with Daniel. We only got a tantalising glimpse of him going down the stairs there. But that was definitely the right way to do it, and I remember being kind of disappointed when they introduced this horrible-looking trapdoor room at the end of level 2 with Nathan, and there it is again with Mike. And of course, Mike's team makes the stupid mistake of trying to go out of the door instead of trying to get down the trapdoor. But they're confused because they don't have a float spell. And there's another mess in the makeup of Mike's quest. Everyone's been so busy worrying about the fillet spell ingredients and adjusting things so they can get the knot spell from Sidris and shoving the rune lock in because they forgot to put it in earlier. They forgot to give Mike any means of floating safely down the trapdoor, which I think is a stupid concept anyway. You can go down wells perfectly safely without floating magic. Why not trapdoors? But there we are. That's got lost along the way, so I don't blame them for being confused there. It kind of seems like they should have had magic to get down the trapdoor like before after such a big deal is always made of it. But on the other hand, there's no excuse for not taking the exit to level 3 when it's there, and you can clearly see it's there, and you know level 3 is down below. So they should have gone through the trapdoor. I mean, why was the rogue Skeletron standing on it? To stop you going down it. All travel between the levels 3 and 2 is halted. So yeah, there's no excuse for not going down the trapdoor, but I can understand why they were confused, and it was wrong of the production team not to put in any float magic for them, and it would have looked very weird and anomalous if Mike had gone down the trapdoor without any float magic. But they should have known to do that anyway. Rebecca's just started her quest, of course. Rebecca, Natalie, Julie, and Emma from the Dorchester and Weymouth area. Tregard gets into a right tizzy, asking them where they come from. The first advisor goes Dorchester. Tregard thinks, fine, I can move on. The second one goes Weymouth, and Tregard goes, Weymouth? What's the last one going to say? Blandford Forum? But no, the last one says Dorchester as well. But of course, seeing this particular quest begin reminds me of another general point about the bad things in presentation in Series 8 that I didn't get round to making on my original series of commentaries. This, all 4 of them coming in together, is awful. Now we get confused, I think, Tregard first says when Vegeta says, oh look, before we get 1, now we get all 4, it works better than ever. No, it doesn't. It's an iconic piece of Knightmare atmosphere that's now gone for no good reason. The Dungeoneer comes in, introduces itself, and then call your advisors to us. That's not happening in Series 8, and that is iconic Knightmare, and it's a great shame not to see it. But even more than that, it's very bad for the paperwork, as it were. It makes it incredibly hard to remember the names of the advisors is, I find, when I was writing Classic Quest for the iShield fanzine, whatever team I was doing, I used to think, right, do I know the names of the 3 advisors? Sure I do. And I used to think of the Dungeoneer calling them out. So if I was thinking about James from Series 3, for example, I'd think, right, what does he say? Philip, Pook, Jamie, Enter. Right, so I know the names of the 3 advisors. Let's do Nicola from Series 7. Diane, Lisa, Vicky. Yes, I know that. I can do it because I can think of the Dungeoneer calling them out. Can I do that in Series 8? No, I can't. Who are Rebecca's advisors? I'm not sure because I can't think of Rebecca calling the names out. And for that reason, if I was doing a classic quest about Series 8, I sometimes had to get down the videotape, put it in the video machine, fast forward to where the quest begins, and make a note of the names of the advisors. And then I think, of course, oh yes, I did know that, really. But goodness me, I shouldn't have to be wasting my time doing that. When it should be a case of Rebecca coming in and shouting out, Natalie, Julie, Emma, for me to remember nice and clearly and quickly. And I'm sure it was this phenomenon that meant that when the Knightmare website first came out and Series 8 was first written up on it, the Dungeoneer in this team was listed as Emma, and the advisors were Rebecca, Julie, and Natalie. Well, that was wrong, wasn't it? But I'm not surprised Nicholas Lamb made that mistake. I'm sure it's to do with you have to write down all 4 names, and he just wasn't sure which one was the Dungeoneer. And of course you can't think. Did the Dungeoneer call Rebecca, Julie, Natalie? No, the Dungeoneer called nothing. The names in Series 8 are unclear and unhelpful. And as I say, that's another very bad piece of overall Series 8 presentation. We just had the final ever appearance of Sylvester Hands in that spyglass sequence. It's an inglorious appearance, isn't it? He doesn't say much, and he doesn't even get to do the plan that Lord Fear's suggesting he's going to do, impersonate Brother Strange. Hands is just there as someone for Lord Fear to talk to and insult, and say amusing things. I don't know any verbs, your worship. And then Lord Fear says, oh, you're too stupid, I'm going to dress up as Brother Strange myself. I mean, what a bad final scene for such an important, well-used, overused character as Sylvester Hands. I was talking on the commentary I did for Series 5 in this series of 8 commentaries about how I thought his appearance there in Series 5, Episode 5, was the best ever appearance of Sylvester Hands. Well, there's the worst one for you. The final appearance, stuck in a spyglass sequence here in Series 8, Episode 7, making no real contribution to the sequence or the quest. An inglorious shove him in end for Sylvester Hands there. And it does leave Paul Valentine free to play Motley in the final 3 episodes of the series, and he hasn't played Motley since episode 1. Strange to give Motley such a long gap after bringing him back, but at least they are both in at the end, as they should be, at least to some extent. Now obviously this is really Clifford Barry playing Brother Strange here, and in the week's break between this episode and episode 8, you might not be sure if this is really Brother Strange at all, and then at the very beginning of episode 8 you get Lord Fear doing his Brother Strange impression, and you think, ah yes, good. That Brother Strange played by Clifford Barry was the real Brother Strange, as it should be. It's a strange old plan of Lord Fear's, the wrong combination to the rune lock. I mean, if it turns out the first or the second tile they press is wrong, Well, they can just use the other code, can't they? It's not like the goblins are going to rush in and get them. As we discover in the next episode, the goblins hang around for a very long time, so there definitely would have been time to try both rune lock combinations. And finally, here in the closing stages of episode 7, we've reintroduced Smirkanov into the show. Quite a break he's had. He's not had an appearance since Series 7, Episode 13. The 100th episode of Knightmare where they put the wrong cast on at the end. But I like this way to include him. Obviously, he's not going to be doing fight sequences in Series 8, so this more detailed, better movement to the face, puppet, just the head and neck coming out of the pit, works really, really well. And it's one reason that the series just seems like it's hotting up, getting interesting. Smirkanov's made his first appearance in the series. He's swapping a speed spell for this Firestone. Great. We've had a couple of quests fail rather cruelly, unfairly in level 3, but there's plenty of time, isn't there, for some more teams to get through, do well, and I'm sure we'll get a series winner at some point. We've still got half the series left. Well, at least that's what I thought when I was first watching this episode. And in some ways, I was feeling quite positive about the series. We'd had that really good rune lock appearance. I'd seen the troll on screen at last. Smirkanov was on screen in an appropriate new environment that I thought worked really well. Yes, the series has found its feet at last. Little did I know, there are only 3 episodes left. I'm reminded of an article that Series 3 superfan Tim Morris wrote for the iShield fanzine, which was basically slagging off Series 4 for not being Series 3, which is not something I'd ever care to do, personally. But one way he expressed himself there was to say, after the absolutely brilliant Series 3, why, only 1 year later, was Knightmare suddenly not important anymore? And that was his assessment of his feelings about Series 4. He found that Knightmare was suddenly not important anymore. Here, as promised, we do see the Fireballs in Fireball Alley speeded up, as they should have been for Mike. They have been for Rebecca, and Smirkanov's speed spell slows them down. It appears not to make Rebecca faster, but the Fireballs slower. And you could say, it has made Rebecca faster, but we're seeing things from her point of view, so the Fireballs appear slower. The trouble with that theory is a goblin comes in at the end, moving at normal speed. So I think, actually, yeah, it has slowed down the Fireballs. But the closest I experienced to why was Knightmare suddenly not important anymore came a week after this. Series 8, Episode 7 was the last episode of Knightmare I watched, and came away feeling happy and content with the future of the show. At the end of Episode 8, the concept of the shortcut had been introduced. The fact that the series was going to be shorter than usual, it's almost time for the path to close, was mitigating my enjoyment of anything that was going on. Just 1 week after watching this closing sequence, watching the next closing sequence, it kind of seemed like Knightmare had been completely ruined. Which is an unfortunate note to end on, but there it is. That's the end of this series of 8 Knightmare commentaries. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.